The first two nonverbal forms of communication we're going to look at is haptics and proxemics. Now, haptics is just a fancy way to say touch. Anytime we use touch to communicate something, it would fall in the haptics bucket. So think about this. When my firstborn was real little, before he knew how to talk, when I would come in the door, right when he learned how to walk, before he had a bunch of language, he would run to me, he would wrap his arms around me, and he would squeeze me tight. And that communicated something to me, right? That communicated this idea of, I miss you and I love you, Dada, even before he could say it. And then, as he got language, he still ran to me, but he would say, Dada, love you, and he would run up and tackle me, and he would use nonverbal communication and verbal communication together to relay a message. And I gotta tell you, there is nothing better than a little kid running up to you and wrapping his arms around you. Now, how does this apply to the workforce? If you're a leader, I'm not recommending you go tackle people and hug them and say, I missed you, right? Like, don't be weird. But what you can do is use this same principle to make people feel valued and seen and really loved. Here's a few practical ways to do this. Number one, start with a handshake. When you see someone, shake their hand and initiate that greeting with a physical or a haptic component. What this does is it really sets the conversation off on the right foot. It can also be used to end a conversation. If you've ever been stuck in a conversation, you're like, oh, I don't know how to end this, politely, but I do have other things I need to get to, and it's been a minute or two. Well, part of this could be through the use of haptics. You can shake a hand, right, and say, this is so good, it's good to see you, let's follow up on this, or let's talk again. But that nonverbal component of the handshake socially lets people know that this conversation is starting to wrap up. The other way you can do this is a gentle touch on the arm. And again, our goal, don't be creepy. Don't go up to someone and be like, I learned to do this in a class. No, you're going to get sued, okay? What you want to do is use it really appropriately and gently. If it seems like it's something that's socially acceptable, to put a hand on the arm as you're shaking a hand. Little things like that that build that connection with the other. Now, with all communication, it's always evolving and changing. So we can't just have these set things where we say, I always do X, Y, or Z, because you could apply it in the wrong setting at the wrong time and make someone feel super uncomfortable, and then you're not connecting at all. You're actually breaking connection. So we want to be careful about when and how we do this, and we always want to be socially aware and self-aware of how what we're doing is being perceived. If you see someone withdraw or feel uncomfortable, then you know, okay, I need to adapt my nonverbals in order to connect with this person. Which makes it fun, right? It's not this equation that we memorize and then we're set. It's always moving, and we're always in the moment saying, how can I show up for this person? Now, the next one is proxemics. Proxemics deals with distance with others. So think about if you and I were 15 feet apart and I said, hey, how's it going? Well, that distance implies that this is not going to be a long conversation, right? But if I start closing that gap and start moving closer towards you, then it's communicating something else. It's communicating that this is going to be a more personal, connective conversation. Now, culturally, we have all sorts of differences in distance. Some cultures, personal space is bigger or smaller, but whatever it is, first of all, we get to learn about other cultures, which is fun. We also want to know, in general, that when we close space, it means there's going to be a deeper connection in that conversation happening. So if you want to connect with people around you, close the distance. Be someone who moves towards others, not away from others. Don't hide in your office and say, well, if they really need me, they'll come and see me. No, close the gap. Initiate and say, I'm moving towards other people. Don't worry about hierarchy. Don't worry about who reports to who and is it appropriate to talk. Talk to everyone. If they have breath, greet them and move towards them. Always be in the habit of that proxemics, closing the gap between you and others. And when you do this physically, It also happens to correlate with the emotional response of people. We're closing the gap or the distance with other people. The other thing with this, and just real practical, if you're in a circle and you're talking, maybe you're hanging out before lunch or after lunch, never have a closed circle. Try to think of a Pac-Man. You know the Pac-Man, how they have the little mouthpiece that's open? Do that in your circles, where you always have a spot open so that people don't feel the need to like try and nudge their way into the circle and say, hey, everyone. But it's very inviting. They know, oh, there's a spot open. I can slide in there. And then when they come in, go back to haptics, handshake, greeting. Good to see you. I'm glad you're here. How are you? And use your language coupled with nonverbal communication to build meaningful connections.